Some things you carry with you for years, thinking they're just strange memories, until they suddenly make sense. That's what happened to me after tWitch died. A truth I'd buried. One I told myself was just paranoia, came roaring back into focus. And it all started with a single flash drive he pressed into my hand. I didn't know then that the moment I took it, I became part of something I could never unsee. Some people wear masks to hide who they are. Others wear skin. That's not poetry. It's the only way I can explain the first time I met Ellen DeGeneres. It was years before the headlines, before the workplace stories leaked. Back when her reputation was still untouchable. I was 28, a media production freelancer barely paying rent on a studio above a dry cleaner in Koreatown. My work was behind the scenes. Post-production cleanup, audio fixes, little details no one noticed unless they went wrong. I liked it that way. I could blend in without disappearing. That's probably why Reggie called me. He was a mid-level producer with enough clout to toss me occasional gigs. This time, it wasn't work. At least, not officially. He wanted me to have dinner with a rising star comedian the network was testing for adaptability. Could she play straight? Could she pass in any crowd? Could she charm the right people? I should have said no, but in LA, favors are currency. So I showed up at a place called LMA. Blackout windows, velvet rope, the kind of spot where exclusivity was half the point. Ellen arrived like she owned the air. Crisp blue blazer, white shirt buttoned to the throat, shoes clean enough to catch ceiling lights. She shook my hand, too firmly, skin colder than it should have been, and called me the control. We ordered water. She didn't touch hers. She didn't blink much either. Every move she made felt calculated. The tilt of her head, the curve of her lips. She asked me one question that stuck like a thorn. Do you think people would still love you if they knew what was inside? When I shifted in my seat, she mirrored me exactly, but a beat too late, like she was buffering. Her skin seemed too tight, like it had been pressed on. A twitch pulsed beneath her eye. And when I excused myself to the restroom, her 2 fingers grazed my hand, and I swear I felt the heat leave my body. Outside, she walked ahead of me through streets that were suddenly empty, her stride perfectly matched to the sidewalk's rhythm. She asked if I believed in choice, then told me real power was invisibility. You only see me because I want to be seen, she said. That was the night I saw her reflection move ahead of her by a second in a darkened window. Straighter posture, wider smile, head tilted like it was studying me. When I blinked, it snapped back into sync. When we reached the curb, a flawless silver BMW was waiting. No fingerprints, no sound when it unlocked. She told me she'd take me home. I tried to refuse, but her voice, soft and measured, seemed to land in my head before I even heard it aloud. Inside, the car smelled new but unused, the leather pale like it had never been touched. There was no engine hum, no dashboard lights. Just the sound of tires against pavement as the street lights slid across her face. She talked about wanting to stand before a crowd as her true self. No smiles, no jokes, and how they'd still love her. She tapped her chest and said the costume was the kindness, the charisma. The truth was something else entirely. Then she started driving faster. We hit a red light and didn't slow. I braced for impact, eyes squeezed shut. But there was nothing. Just the soft whoosh of air as we passed through, untouched. When she dropped me off, she asked to come up, claiming she needed the bathroom. Against every instinct screaming no, I said yes. We climbed the stairs in silence. Her movements were unnervingly smooth, no breath, no weight in her steps. Halfway up, her bone-dry, cold fingers brushed mine, hard as bone beneath the skin. I rushed ahead to my apartment, unlocked it, and told her she should leave. She just stood there, calm as if I hadn't spoken. I slammed the door. That's when I heard it. Her voice, low, almost childlike from the other side, let me in. Not a request, a knowing. Then, boom, a thud so hard it knocked me to the floor. When I looked through the peephole, something was there, not her. A tall, faceless void shaped like a person. Then it was gone. By morning, I'd packed and fled across the country. I told no one. Years passed before I crossed paths with her again, this time backstage at her show. I'd landed a job as a segment research assistant. My work was simple: deliver fact sheets for the day's guests. Every time, she'd take them without looking at me, her cold hand outstretched. The hierarchy backstage was rigid. Rules weren't spoken, but everyone knew them. Don't speak unless spoken to. Never make eye contact unless invited. People disappeared for small mistakes. A lighting guy was fired for using the wrong hallway. An audience coordinator cried before every taping. One night, staying late, I saw her again in that same eerie posture, speaking softly to someone tall and unmoving. It faded into the shadows like smoke. She turned, smiled, and said, "No one. Have a nice day." 2 weeks later, on my birthday, she handed me a small sealed envelope along with a hoodie and an AMC gift card. "Just in case you ever feel too heavy," she'd said. I forgot about it until a senior executive told me Ellen wanted to see me and to bring the envelope. The set was dim, lit with a strange amber glow. She was sitting where celebrities usually did, but this time, she made me pretend I was Taylor Swift. Then she cut the act and asked if I believed her. When I hesitated, she slid the envelope back to me, alongside an identical copy. Inside was my resignation letter, already signed and dated. I hadn't said a word yet, but my fate had been sealed long before. It was years later, after I'd left the industry, that I saw tWitch again. We weren't close, but there was mutual recognition. Two people who'd worked in the same shadowed corners of Ellen's world. One afternoon, just weeks before his death, he found me sitting alone at a coffee shop. He didn't order anything, just sat down and slid a small black flash drive across the table. His eyes were tight, scanning the room before he spoke. "If anything happens to me," he said, "you'll know what to do. But you can't open it unless you're ready to never sleep again." I didn't understand then. I thought it was paranoia, grief talking. I pocketed it, told myself I'd never look. Then the news broke that he was gone, and 2 nights later, Ellen herself called me. Not a text, not an email, a call. Her voice was the same, soft, measured, almost warm. "Forget you ever saw it," she said. She didn't say the words, flash drive. She didn't have to. I knew exactly what she meant. The thing about hearing her voice again after all those years was that it felt like no time had passed at all. I was back in that dim set, sitting in a too warm chair, clutching a sealed envelope that had already decided my future. Forget you ever saw it, she said. No preamble, no explanation. Her tone wasn't threatening, but it didn't have to be. It was the kind of voice that could plant itself in your head and stay there. I didn't say a word. I just let the silence hang. She didn't feel it. After a beat, she ended the call. No goodbye, no click, just gone. I sat there in my kitchen, phone in one hand, flash drive in the other. I wanted to throw it away, but I couldn't. The plastic casing was warm, almost like it had been sitting in someone's palm for hours. For the rest of the night, I kept catching myself glancing at it on the counter. Every time I thought of tWitch, his eyes scanning the coffee shop, his voice low and certain. You can't open it unless you're ready to never sleep again. I didn't open it that night, or the next, but the thought of it started leaking into everything I did. On the fourth night, I caved. I didn't plug it into my main computer. I wasn't that stupid. I dug an old laptop out of a closet, one I hadn't used in years, and booted it up without connecting to Wi-Fi. The drive didn't have folders, just a single file named Rehearsal. No extension, no date stamp. The moment I clicked it, the screen went black. Then the image flickered on, grainy, like it had been recorded through a security feed. At first, I couldn't even tell what I was looking at. A large room, dimly lit. The walls seemed to ripple slightly like heat haze. And then she walked in. Ellen. No blazer and no mic pack, no audience-ready smile, just a plain t-shirt, jeans, and a blank face. She wasn't alone. Two figures were already in the room. One was tWitch. The other wasn't right. Too tall, shoulders sloped in an unnatural way. Its head tilted too far forward, as if listening to something the rest of us couldn't hear. They didn't speak, not in words I could hear, but their mouths moved. Ellen's smile shifted, slow and deliberate, until it was wider than I'd ever seen. The tall figure stepped forward, and for a second, its outline flickered, like it was struggling to hold its shape. The video cut off, just gone. The laptop froze. I had to pull the battery to get it to shut down. The next day, I tried to pretend nothing had happened. I went to work, answered emails, made dinner. But my phone kept buzzing, not with calls or texts, but with blank notifications. No sender, no content, just timestamps. At first they were random, but by evening, I realized they were marking moments I'd been alone in a room, standing at the sink, folding laundry, sitting in my car at a red light. That night, I dreamed of the rehearsal room. Only this time, I was the one standing where tWitch had been. Ellen was across from me, smiling that too wide smile, and the tall figure was at my side. I couldn't see its face. There was no face, but I could feel it studying me. When I woke, the flash drive was sitting on my chest. I hadn't touched it since the night before. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything, the dinner years ago, the BMW ride, the hallway shadow, the sealed envelope, was all part of the same current. And that tWitch had been caught in it, just like me. I started looking into his last months, quietly. I didn't reach out to his friends or family. Didn't want to drag anyone into this, but I found scraps. Production assistants who remembered him staying late in the green room for no clear reason. Security guards who said he sometimes left through doors that technically didn't lead anywhere. One person who wouldn't give me their name told me about a night when Twitch and Ellen disappeared for nearly an hour during a commercial break. No explanation, no visible exit or return. The same person told me they'd once seen him come back from backstage, looking pale and unfocused, like he'd just run miles, but his clothes were untouched, not a bead of sweat. I thought about the tall figure, about the way it flickered in the video, about the way Ellen had always spoken in half confessions, never saying what she meant but making you feel it anyway. It was a week after I'd opened the drive when she showed up again. Not Ellen. At least, I don't think it was. I'd been asleep for maybe an hour when a noise pulled me halfway to consciousness. Not a bang, not a crash. Just the quiet sound of someone standing still in a room that should be empty. I didn't open my eyes right away. I just lay there, listening. My apartment was silent except for my own breathing, until it wasn't. There was another rhythm now, shallow, uneven, like someone mimicking breath without understanding how it's supposed to sound. When I finally looked, there was a shadow in the corner. It was shaped like a person, but the edges bled into the air. It didn't move, but I felt it leaning forward, the way you lean in to hear someone whisper. I blinked, and it was gone. But the next morning, the flash drive was back on my chest. I told myself I wouldn't open the file again. The first time had been enough to keep me looking over my shoulder for days. But the thing about carrying a question that big, it starts to rot inside you. 2 nights later, I set the old laptop on the table, shut every curtain, and plugged in the flash drive. This time, there were 2 files. The original rehearsal and a new one called Final. The timestamp on Final was from the night before tWitch died. When I clicked it, the screen lit up with the same room, but the lighting was different, harsher. Ellen stood in the center, wearing that crisp blue blazer I remembered from the dinner years ago. Twitch was off to one side, pacing. There was sound this time. Not dialogue, but a low, constant hum, like a generator buried deep underground. Over it, Ellen's voice, steady, deliberate, speaking words I didn't understand. They weren't in English. They weren't in anything I recognized. The tall figure appeared again, materializing out of the far wall. It moved toward Twitch. He stopped pacing, shoulders stiffening. Ellen didn't look at him, just kept speaking to the thing. And then it stepped into him. Not in a way you could see, like an actor blocking a scene. No, it was like pouring ink into water. His posture changed instantly. His head tilted at the same angle I'd seen in that reflection years ago. Ellen smiled, not at him, at the camera. The video ended there. I sat frozen, replaying the scene in my head. The way he moved afterward in public, still dancing, still smiling, but sometimes with that slight delay, that flicker in the eyes, like he was buffering. And the thought hit me so hard, I almost said it aloud. Maybe the thing in the room hadn't taken him that night. Maybe it had been with him for a long time. That would explain the late nights, the unexplained absences, the way people said he seemed both fully present and miles away at the same time. And it made her call to me even clearer. Forget you ever saw it. Wasn't about protecting him. It was about protecting it. A week later, I saw her again. In public, broad daylight, on a busy street in West Hollywood. She was alone, no entourage, no cameras. She spotted me before I could turn away. Walked straight over, same calm steps as always. "You still have it," she said. Not a question. I didn't answer. "Some people think they want to know," she continued. "But they don't. They just want the comfort of thinking they could know, if they ever needed to." Her eyes locked on mine. They were darker than I remembered. Not in color, but in depth, like looking down a well with no bottom. "If you release it," she said softly, "you won't make them understand. You'll just make them choose, and most of them will choose wrong." She stepped back, smiled faintly, and walked away. Not fast, not slow, just enough for me to see her reflection in a shop window, moving a fraction ahead of her, watching me instead of the street. That night, I sat with the laptop in front of me, flash drive plugged in. My finger hovered over the trackpad, ready to copy both files to an encrypted folder and send them to a dozen different inboxes. But then I thought about what she'd said, about choice, about how most people would choose wrong. If I released it, the story would go viral, sure, but it would get buried under memes and conspiracy jokes within a week. The footage would be picked apart, called fake, dismissed. And in the meantime, whatever I had exposed would know exactly where to find me. I closed the laptop. I didn't destroy the drive, I didn't release it. I put it back in the same drawer where I'd kept that sealed envelope for all those years. But now, every time I open that drawer, I know what's inside. I know it's real. Weeks have passed. I haven't seen her again. Haven't heard from anyone connected to the show. But sometimes, at night, I wake up and feel the weight of something on my chest. Not like a hand, not like a person. Just weight. And every so often when I catch my reflection in a dark window, I swear there's a flicker, a version of me, a half second ahead, watching instead of mirroring. Maybe one day I'll send the files. Maybe one day the choice will be taken from me. But for now, I'm holding it. And I'm telling you this much because you need to understand. There are things you can see and live with, and there are things you can't. The flash drive was the latter. And tWitch knew it.